Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're getting into something really practical, diagnosing your business model. We're going to take what can feel like just another health checklist and turn it into a super sharp diagnostic tool, one that helps you find out what's really holding your company back.
So, does your business just feel a little sick? You probably know the feeling, right? Maybe growth is flatlined, your team is feeling totally burnt out, or your customers just don't seem as excited as they used to be. These are the classic symptoms, but here's the thing. They aren't the actual disease. And if all you do is treat the symptoms, you're never going to get to the root of the problem and actually get healthy.
Okay, so it's time to stop guessing. Let's start a real diagnostic journey together. We're going to move past just throwing solutions at symptoms and actually figure out what's going on under the hood of your business model. We're talking about a structured approach to find the real core of the problem.
All right, first up, the first symptoms. Just like when you go to the doctor, the first step in any good diagnosis is recognizing those early warning signs, the little signals that tell you something's not right. So take a look at this list. Do any of these sound familiar? A mismatch with your product, maybe market demand is kind of fizzling out, or you're seeing way too many good people leave. Now, it's super easy to see these as separate, isolated problems, right? But more often than not, they're all pointing to a much deeper, single issue. Something's off with the business model itself.
Okay, section 2, checking the vital signs. Because look, a feeling that something is wrong isn't enough. We need cold, hard data. We have to get objective. And we do that by checking the business's vital signs. And in business, that means it's key performance indicators, or KPIs.
Now, this is where the story really starts to take shape. These are the hard numbers. And yeah, you're looking at the gap between your target and where you actually are. But honestly, the most critical piece of information on this whole table is that trend column. See, a single bad quarter, that can be anything, a fluke. But a consistently declining trend, whoa, that is a massive signal that you got a systemic problem on your hands.
Let's just take one of these as an example. Look at that customer retention rate. A 15-point gap. That's not just a missed target, you know? That is a huge flashing red flag. Why? Because retention is one of the best predictors of your future revenue. A drop like this is basically telling you that the value you think you're providing and the value customers are actually getting are way out of sync. And guess what? They're voting with their feet.
All right, on to section 3, listening for clues. Look, KPIs are absolutely crucial, but they don't tell you the whole story. To really get the why behind those numbers, you've got to listen. And I mean really listen to your customers. They are on the front lines, experiencing your business model every single day.
And sometimes a single piece of feedback like this is just incredibly powerful. This person isn't just saying your support is slow. Think about what they're really saying. They love the concept, but the execution is failing them. This directly connects an operational weakness, slow support, to a terrible customer experience. And hey, that probably helps explain that declining retention rate we just saw, right?
And this is so important. This chart shows us where all these clues are coming from. Sure, surveys are fine, they're useful, but look at this. The most urgent, the most unfiltered, and frankly, the most emotional feedback is coming right through your support tickets. This right here is a goldmine for diagnostic info. It's where you find out what's really hurting.
Okay, moving on. Section 4, scanning the environment. A proper diagnosis can't happen in a bubble, right? We've looked inside the business, at the numbers and the feedback. Now we have to look outside, because external forces can be just as much to blame for your problems as anything happening internally.
And this next step, well, it requires some brutal honesty. You've got to look at your competitors and ask, where are they outmaneuvering us? For example, if they have a way better delivery channel, how does that shine a light on a weakness in your own operations? Putting their strength right next to your weakness like this, it makes it painfully clear how the market can and will exploit any flaw in your model.
And then you have the really big stuff, the macro-level storms, you could call them. We're talking new technologies that come out of nowhere, customer tastes that seem to change overnight, or big economic shocks. Your business model has to be resilient enough to handle all of that. If it's too rigid, too brittle, one of these storms could be the thing that sinks the ship.
All right, section 5, making the final diagnosis. This is it. We've checked the vitals, we've listened to the patient, we've scanned the environment, we've gathered all the evidence. Now, it's time to connect the dots and finally name the disease.
And we're going to use the structure, the diagnostic funnel. It's a really deliberate process. It stops us from just reacting to whatever symptom is screaming the loudest. Instead,
We're using all that evidence we collected to go from this big, messy list of problems all the way down to a single specific root cause.
And this is the crucial point right here. We are not looking for a to-do list of 10 different things to fix. No. We're looking for the one core fundamental issue that if you could just fix that one thing, it would solve the greatest number of those symptoms all across the business. That is the root cause.
And after you follow all the evidence, the diagnosis usually points to one of these three big culprits. Are you just fundamentally misaligned with what your customers actually need today? Is your model built in a way that it just can't scale? Or have you simply failed to adapt while the market completely evolved around you?
Okay, final section. Section 6, the path to a cure. Because let's be real, a diagnosis is pretty useless without a treatment plan. So we have to ask, what happens if you do nothing? And maybe even more important, is the organization actually ready to take its medicine?
The financial cost of doing nothing, that's usually pretty easy to calculate. But the long-term and sometimes irreversible damage to your brand reputation, that can be so much more severe. Trust, once it's gone, is incredibly hard to get back. This is what's really on the line if that root cause isn't dealt with.
Which brings us to the ultimate question that has to follow any diagnosis like this. Acknowledging the problem, that's a huge first step, for sure. But it has to be followed by a real, genuine readiness to explore a strategic pivot, a fundamental change in direction for the business. And before you even start talking about a cure, you absolutely have to run through this readiness checklist. Is everyone, and I mean everyone, on the same page? Does the leadership team agree on what the diagnosis is? Is the evidence so clear that it's undeniable? Because without that alignment, any attempt you make to pivot is probably going to fail before it even starts.
And so that leaves us with this final, essential question you've got to ask yourselves. The whole point of this entire diagnostic journey, it isn't to perform an autopsy on a failed business model. Not at all. It's to uncover the crucial insights that will become the blueprint for your future, a more resilient and way more successful business.